Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG Podcast. This is episode number 97 of the show, getting so close to that milestone of episode 100. I am Ramon Mejia, though. Every single week on this podcast, I bring you the roundup of the week's best LitRPG reviews, the news, and of course the author interviews each show. This week I have 4 new LitRPG reviews, folks, just for you at home. Now that might be the fewest reviews I've ever done in a podcast, but to be fair, one of those novels is over 2,200 pages long, which is about 7 regular 300-page novels, so, I think it balances out. Also this week I'll have the first winners of the LitRPG Podcast Giveaway that we're doing to celebrate episode 100 when it comes up. So I'll have those names for you in LitRPG News. But of course, the first titles that I'll be reviewing this week include Trolls, Traps, and Treachery, a LitRPG thriller, Kings and Conquests Book 2, The Trash Share Dungeon, also Immortal Kalika Episode 1, and The Land, Predators. This is Chaos Seed Book number 7. See, we even have the matching color scheme this week. But of course, we begin the show, though, with LitRPG News. And in LitRPG News, we begin with, of course, the some great... I always like to celebrate when LitRPG authors in the genre do really well, and Aloran Kong is doing gangbusters this week. Big congratulations to Aloran Kong. He released Book 7 finally, after all that waiting, and it's done wonderfully this week, folks. It's been in the top 50 on Amazon's novels, like the top 50 of all their titles, all week long. I think the highest I personally saw it was in the 20s, and that is just really amazing. The novel is, of course, number 1 in multiple categories, and it already has over 250 reviews, and it's only been like 4 or 5 days since it's dropped. So congratulations, Aloran, on having such a wonderful, successful launch of your latest book, man. Okay, also another LitRPG news. Luke Chimlenko, author of The Ascent Online, released a gorgeous map of Lower Aurelia from his novel series for Ascent Online, his world. I just want to thank him for commissioning something great and special like this. It's really nice when authors do these kind of special things to reward their fans, or just because it's fun. I can't emphasize how beautiful this particular map is. It's done by hand. You see all the different locations mentioned in the novels, and even some that haven't actually been mentioned yet. So if you're a fan of that particular series, go over to Luke Chimlenko's page and check out that particular map. We'll also have a link in the show notes for you folks to go look at that pretty thing. Okay, last bit of LitRPG news. The LitRPG Podcast Giveaway. Here we go. These are the winners. The first winners for this are going to be 3. James Roberts, James Lee, and Philip Holt. I've sent messages to each one of those folks. Each of them gets to choose between either a free ebook or an Audible credit. We had some authors in the genre very generously donate stuff for prizes, including ebooks, and some other stuff will be given away next week, including like physical stuff, signed copies of books, physical merchandise. A lot of that's only going to go to like people who live in like the United States or like in North America because of shipping costs. But these are some folks who were nice enough to donate some of their ebooks, including R.A. Mejia, that's me, author of Adventures on Terra and Project Alpha. Apollo's Thorn was also nice to donate some of his works for the ebook giveaway here. And it's going to be Codename Freedom, Underworld, Level Up or Die, 2 of his great titles. Daniel Shinhofen was also nice enough to donate. He's the author of Alpha World, Apocalypse Gates, and Last Horizon. Also Dave Wilmarth of the Green Star Chronicles. All these authors are very generous in donating copies of their books to the winners of this particular portion of the giveaway. And again, we're going to have more people winning every single week up until the point of episode number 100, in which I'll give away the big prize. Now, the ways that you can win, or ways you can enter to win, I should say. Each one of these things will get you an entry signing up for the LitRPG Podcast newsletter. That's just where I send you a copy of the show notes, including all the reviews and links to the video and an audio version of the podcast. You can also get a chance to win by liking our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages. Links in the show notes for that. And also, of course, sending us an email or a post on our Facebook or Twitter page with your favorite LitRPG podcast story, whether it's going to be like a particular review or a news story or anything else you like about the podcast. Sending us that information will also get you an entry into the giveaway contest. I have a few of these people have sent, and they're super adorable. I can't wait to read them later on as we get closer to episode 100. And of course, some of the things you can win: Audible codes, ebooks, signed print editions of some physical copies, including stuff from Ramon Mejia and some other authors as well. But of course, the big grand prize, I've actually decided to modify this a little bit. It'll be a combination of like merchandise, signed copies of books, and a $100 Amazon gift card. So you're going to get some stuff, hopefully, from a bunch of different authors. So for the big grand prize winners. So great stuff to be entering in for. And of course, this is all just a matter of just celebrating that our podcast, the LitRPG Podcast, that's right, it's mine and yours, everybody in the audience. You contribute, you watch, so you're definitely part of this process. But we're hitting episode 100, and that's kind of a big thing, because that means almost roughly 2 years of effort have been put into the show, and without the audience, there is no show. So this is kind of just a way of me saying thank you guys for watching and listening. Okay, but enough of that mushy stuff. On to some other stories that are novels that came out this week. Haven't reviewed them yet, but they are out, including Into the Black by Stuart Gross. This is book number 8, War Stories, that is out now. Also, New Eden Royal by Deck Davis. And J.A. Cipriano's third book in the Rule of Rule series, Oblivion, is out as well, as is Chrysalis, The Crucible of Immortality, Book 2 by Leo Spirit Blackman, and that one is out as well. So these are all LitRPG titles that are out currently. On the LitRPG list on Amazon, there have been a number of stuff that was released this week. A lot of it just isn't LitRPG. So these are the stuff I know that it actually is. So here we go. Also, some new LitRPG audiobooks came out, including J.A. Cipriano's The Builder's Throne Book 5. That one's out. As is Desert Storm Book 3 by Don Chapman, read by Andrea Parsons. And The Redeemer of the Dead, which is the second book in the System Apocalypse series, that is out as an audiobook right now for you guys to listen to as well. So, of course, also the links in the show notes. We'll have links to the ebook reviews that we gave them. So in case you weren't sure what those were about or if they were good or not, we also have reviews for those as well. Okay, now in upcoming LitRPG, this is just where I read off all the stuff that I know it's coming out in the next couple months. We have some new additions to this particular list, but you can always skip ahead if you don't want to listen to it. On February the 25th, Unbound Deathlord Obliteration by Edward Castle will be out. That's the second book in that particular series. There is no pre-order for it yet. The author has just stated publicly it's going to be out on February the 25th. On the 27th of February, it'll be The Lionheart, a LitRPG novel. On the 28th of February, there's going to be Kingdom Level 4. There's quite a few titles coming out on the 28th of February. Also in that particular category, that date, is going to be Dragon Seed, a LitRPG Dragon Rider adventure. Also, Avatar's Rising is going to be out on February 28th. As is Dual Reality 2071, a dystopian LitRPG cyberpunk war novel. That'll be out there as well. On March the 6th, it'll be Vasily Mihenko's The Restart, Dark Paladin book number 3. On February the 7th, it'll be Outpost. And on March the 12th, this one's new to the list as well, it'll be The Crown and Key, which will be Pharaoh book number 8. Okay, also out on March 15th, Permadeath Online book 2. Achilles' Reign will be out on March the 16th. Ghost in the Game will be out on March the 19th. That's the third book in the Dream State Saga series. On May the 10th, it is going to be Mightier Still, a LitRPG story for Enter the Louvre side quest, Becoming Death Book 1. We recently reviewed that author's other book in that series. It looks like they might be different protagonists, though. On May the 10th, it'll be Blind Gambit. On May the 17th, World of Karik, The First Crusade. This is another Russian LitRPG title that's been translated in English. You can look for their first book. I think it came out in December of 2017, if you don't remember what it is about. And that's all the stuff I know that's upcoming. Okay, on to new releases and reviews. Okay, up first in new releases and reviews, we have Trolls, Traps, and Treachery, a LitRPG thriller Kings and Conquests book number 2. This is a really super simple review. This author had originally published these in the past, books 1 and 2 of the series. He got bad reviews. He got a little bunch of stuff, including from myself, saying these aren't really LitRPG stories as much as they're like cyberpunk-ish stories, but a lot of the story took place in real life, and even the stuff that was game oriented was more just VR stuff and less LitRPG stuff. The author pulled them down, put in new cover art, added more content to the stories, but they're still not LitRPG. So this is a simple review, not LitRPG. Book number 1 wasn't when he republished. Book number 2 isn't now that he republished this one. So it gets a score of 4 out of 10. Really simple. There you go. Okay, next review is The Trash Tier Dungeon by K. Fairborn. Okay, this one is 279 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. This is the author's description. For these two, getting along means life or death. Minette, the lowest ranked sentient dungeon in Bellstrain, deserves her trash tier title. She's more interested in playing with her cats and having fun than being a proper dungeon. Scorned by recent experiences, Arden, the dungeon pixie, doesn't have time for fun. The only thing she likes on her schedule is beheading her enemies. Following a treacherous act against her last dungeon, the Overseer of Dungeons reassigns Arden to work with Minette. If she fails to lift Minette to the Overseer standards within a month's time, he'll smite her. Complicating things further is a revenge-seeking rogue who wants Arden dead. Okay, so that's the author's description. This Trash Tier Dungeon novel is a mashup of other Dungeon Core stories. It takes the sarcastic fairy guide from the Slime Dungeon Chronicles, the tech tree from the Futuristic Dungeon, and the town relationship stuff from the Divine Dungeon, and combines it with a smart sense of humor and lots of snark. And I think that's kind of the thing that makes it interesting, at least. The author freely acknowledges the influences on her particular story. There's even like a passage referencing everybody. It says, every dungeon has the humble origins, whether they were soul-stealing, slime-based, divine, science-focused, classically focused, or any permutation of all the above. One of her dungeon minions in the novel is even named Dakota, spelled Daccota. So the author is very upfront in her writing, saying, oh, she's heavily influenced by these authors. And you can kind of tell she's pulling stuff from other kind of these dungeon stories. Now, in terms of game mechanics, nothing's really new here. The author isn't bringing anything like particularly amazing or fresh from that perspective, but that doesn't mean the story is not interesting. The relationship between the female dungeon Minette and the dungeon pixie Arden is probably going to be the biggest draw for readers. Initially goes through several phases of like dysfunction. Like each one of these characters of the dungeon and the dungeon pixie have issues, and part of the story is, in their character arc is them working through it and working through it together and against each other and yelling and screaming, having emotional uppers, and eventually, that reconciliation and the two becoming BFFs. It's kind of a thing you're either going to really love or hate. It's going to be one or the other. And once you get there and you kind of see what is happening, you can kind of decide. For me, I was like, okay, not my favorite part of the story, but it's also skippable. It doesn't for me detract or anything, but I know for a lot of other people, it's going to be super interesting drama, or it's going to be annoying. So it is what it is. But you still have the same kind of dungeon stuff you do in other novels, including like room building, trap building, minion spawning, adventure fighting. It's good stuff. It gets a little repetitive as far as combat goes later in the story, because there's a distinct lack of variation of both like monsters defending the dungeon and adventurers trying to be like. There's only one group that goes into this dungeon repeatedly. That's kind of it. It's just, and this group does repeatedly. Escapes repeatedly come back to like the big final battle. So that's just, one of the few complaints personally I have with the story is that it sometimes ignores one of its game mechanics, the resource mechanic. Initially, it's really made like a super big deal about. Like, there's a distinct impression in the beginning level that resources are finite, and it takes time and luck to find them. But for most of the story, anytime anything needs to be built or purchased, there's really no shortage of resources needed. And that's just a decision by the author. It's neither good or bad in of itself, but it for me was just like, oh, you make a really big deal with this mechanic, and then you kind of ignore it for the expediency of story progression. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. It's just sometimes it goes to the point like, oh, magic wand waving. Oh, by the way, I purchased this great power that just happened to save us with resources I didn't tell you about. I'm like, okay, it's, overall, though I had a good time reading it. It's not the best dungeon master story, but it is entertaining. Like the things that are probably going to be a draw for you are going to be the relationship between the dungeon and the pixie fairy, and also the sense of humor. This is a very funny story if the sense of humor lands with you. It's very snarky. It's very irreverent sometimes of even like the genre itself. It's also a cat themed dungeon, so if you're into cats, I guess it could also be something that is a draw for you. So just again, don't expect the depth of either the game mechanics or the world building you find with some of these other dungeon master stories. Like I said, it's entertaining for what it is. So I had a good time with it. It gets a score of 7 out of 10 for me. That's the Treachery dungeon with a score of 7 out of 10. Okay. On to our next review, Immortal Kalika, episode number 1, LitRPG The Speedrunner, Episodic Kalika. That's a long title. Written by Ballartrate. Okay, this one is 195 pages. It is $2.99. It is also available on Kindle Unlimited. I will read you the author's description. Gender-bending LitRPG, RPG, gamelet with an emphasis on its grim, dark, active combat and protagonist skill building and power acquisition. It features a no-nonsense protagonist with a tragic past and a reason to want to live in a video game, even one as gritty and dark as the demon and revenant-infested Project DH. You've previously known her accomplishments as the #1 player and death game Project DH. To many, her gameplay stats and skills have made her an enigma to the hundreds of alpha testers imprisoned in the game, as well as the developers assisting them. Now you get to see the player behind the infamous avatar of Immortal Kalika, a determined and young woman who carries the burden of a great tragedy with her, a tragedy that gives her strength, but one that also threatens to crush her from the inside out. So there you go. Okay. My review basically, you need to understand that the main character in the story, Zima / Immortal Kalika, is actually a side character for the author's other series, Hell's Glitch. This is supposed to be set in the same universe with the character playing an alpha build of that same story. If you've read Hell's Glitch, much of what occurs in this particular novel is going to be familiar, and that can be a big problem. At least it was for me. This story, even though it has a completely different beginning, there's a bunch of character building history stuff for the character in the beginning. Once you get into the game, it feels like it's recycled material from Hell's Glitch. It's not. I mean, it technically isn't. It's more like two different people playing the same Dark Souls-inspired game and making different game choices. However, because there are so many similarities, it feels like a recycled story. And like I said, it's not, but it kind of feels like it. Both characters are game testers. And I mean the main character in this story and also in Hell's Glitch. Both of those characters are playing the same Dark Souls-inspired game. They go to the same land, they fight the same monsters, they both throw in the same quest and meet the same NPCs. Both characters use the same weapons. They essentially choose different ones, but they get to work out all the weapons, so you're not getting like any new experience as far as like the weapons they use. The game mechanics are the same in both stories. Now, the difference between those two stories, between Hell's Glitch and this one, is that it comes down to the choices that the characters make. In this particular story, the main character chooses a different starting class and uses magic. She eventually chooses a different build. She also makes different quest decisions, aligning with a different faction than the main character in Hell's Glitch did. Also, the character in this story it's kind of boring. And I mean, the action is fine. It's just that everything for this character seems to come super easy, and there's almost no challenge for this main character, which means there's no stakes of her losing. And a lot of that is because the way that the character is set up in Hell's Glitch. Like, she can't be a failure in her own story because of the way that she's described in that one. It's just kind of something you have to reconcile with. But because of the fact that everything comes easy to her, it's not really a super interesting character, at least for me, because there's no growth as far as like her getting better. Everything just easy, beats everybody up. know, because of both the feeling that I've read the story already, because again, I've seen this worldview, I've seen the character choice options, I've already seen somebody talk to these NPCs and go on these same quests, and the fact that there's not really a lot of character growth for this character in the story, I didn't have a really good time with it. I thought it was a little predictable because, again, I've already read Hell's Glitch. I could kind of see where these quests were going. Like, I literally had to send a deja vu when I was reading. So I'm like, have I read this story before? And it doesn't say on there like it's the Hell Glitch universe. So it wasn't immediately obvious to me. But when I was reading it, I was like, have I read this before? And I had to look it up, the author. So I'm like, oh, that's where I know the story from. And it was a little predictable because of that. So for me, it gets a score of 5 out of 10. Just wasn't particularly entertained. Not bad by any means. Just I have already kind of read the story. There you go. Immortal Kalika, episode 1, the Speedrunner, gets a score of 5 out of 10. So there you go. Okay, on to our last review. Again, feels like a super short episode. This is going to be The Land Predators, the LitRPG Saga, Chaos Seeds, book number 7. There we go. Written, of course, by Ramon Mejia. Okay, this one is 2,202 pages. A massive book. $8.99 and available on Kindle Unlimited. I'll read you the author's description. In The Land Predators, the Mist Village has harnessed its power. Core buildings, professional fighters, and now their own dungeon. The settlement is primed to grow into a kingdom of true power and magic. The path to power has not been without risk, however. The Mist Village has been noticed. Evil nobles from the Kingdom of Law, bloodthirsty goblins from the Serrated Mountains, and an undead lord with a penchant for human sacrifice, fanatical goblins from the depths, all plot the village's destruction. The predators are circling. Richard's people are horribly outnumbered by foes whose own power has been entrenched for thousands of years. Richter and Cyan need to be stronger than ever before. Luckily, they are. New skills have been learned, stronger enchantments have been wrought, and hundreds of villagers have answered the call to adventure. The companions do not stand alone. While many eyes have turned towards the Mist Village wanting to take the treasures within, the Mist Village stares black with a simple message. Come and get it. So there you go. Now, I'm just going to address the big price tag on this. It's $8.98, which may seem like a lot of money for an ebook. But to put it another way, per page count, it's like 0.4 of a cent per page, which is a really great value for what you're getting. To put it another way, this book is as long as 7 300-page books. So there's a lot of content here. Personally, when I was reading it, just looking at the story, I think it could have easily been broken up into like 3 or 4 novels, and it would have been just as entertaining. But the author chose to put it all together because that's the way it fit for him. So, thank you very much. Now for the review. Kind of an easy review. This is a fun novel in line with the rest of the series. So if you liked books 1 through 6, book 7 is going to be entertaining for you. It has all the same things you've come to love with the series, the characters, the adventure, the action, the kingdom building. All that stuff is here in spades. Plus there's some really just great scenes in this particular story. One of the few common complaints in the reviews that I've noticed is about the beginning of this novel. There's a lot of upkeep in the beginning. There's a bunch of notifications, which I think have switched from just being plain text to actually being boxed in, I want to say graph or boxed in messages. And on one hand, they're easier to skip if you don't want to read them. On the other hand, they do stand out a bit more. And they take up a little more space. And it's just there are pages and pages notifications at the beginning of this story. And it is what it is. It's just the novel has to deal with the consequences and all the stuff that happened at the end of book 6. It has to deal with that at some point. So it ends up being at the beginning of book 7, which includes results from the last, all the kills, all the experience points, distributions, all that stuff. There's also an introduction of a dungeon in the novel, which is not a spoiler. It's in the author description. And there's a bunch of new information on that, in addition to town building stuff, crafting, and managing citizens. So be aware that that's a big part of the story. Now, starting around 20% in the novel, the action starts again as Richter and his companions explore the new bloody chaos dungeon. And after that, the story just kind of regularly switches between action, adventure stuff, and kingdom building. So it is a big part of what the story is. Cool thing is that I was really glad to finally see in this particular series. We finally get to meet another Chaos Seed. And it's a very interesting arc for that particular character. I won't spoil it, but it is interesting. You also get more information about where the Chaos Seeds come from, why they were sent to Earth. So it's a bunch of great information there. And I was honestly happy to see it. Like I've talked to Alorn before in author interviews, and he's always said like, oh no, there are going to be other Chaos Seeds. They're going to be a lot. Remember, this planet is the size of Jupiter. And so even though there might be a ton of player, Chaos Seeds here, it's going to be relatively rare to meet one just because of the amount of landmass that this planet has. So it was really fun for me, at least, to see us finally get to meet another Chaos Seed and what they're doing with that particular power. We also get to see some resolutions from some other outstanding quests, including some really quite epic fights towards the end of the novel. The dungeon, I think, is a great add to the series because it provides local monster hunting, and you get some really cool mechanics about like building a dungeon master. It's not quite like a full-fledged dungeon master story. It's more like a hybrid addition to like the kingdom building stuff that you see in this particular series. But it's still fun to see, fun to read, and it's fun how the dungeon is used as well. Overall, it's a really good read. I had a good time reading it. Like I said, there's enough content here easily for like 3 to 4 like full-fledged independent novels. It took me like three solid days of reading to get through this novel, and just to finish it. So I had a good time with it. Get the score of 7 out of 10 for me. That's The Land, Predators, LitRPG Saga, Chaos Seeds, book number 7 with a score of 7 out of 10. So there you go. Okay, that's it, folks. We're done. Like I said, kind of a short episode because 4 novels, and then, but one of them is really long, so that's why it took a long time. That's it for us, everybody. Thank you for listening, for watching. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and Patreon. We have links in the show notes if you want to follow us on any of those places and get the show on a regular basis. You can also, of course, download us on iTunes, Google, as an audio podcast. Any places you get your regular podcast stuff, you can find us as well. If you enjoy, of course, you enjoy the podcast, and if you want to support this in any way, shape, or form, you can find all the ways to do so at litrpgpodcast.com/support. Thanks to you again, everyone, for listening and for hanging out with me and for, sticking with us through almost 100 episodes at this point, through 97 technically now. So until we can hang out again, my folks, to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.